Hey Flock, I'm Mike from Epic Duck Studios and welcome to the test bench. Today I'm going to be trying out Citadel contrast color Gryph-charger gray. And the model I've got here is from Star Hat Miniatures. It's a little crow assassin guy. I actually forget his specific name, but pretty cool little sculpt by a fellow Darcy Perry down in New Zealand. So yeah, I'm going to be working on that right now. So I'm going to be taking the Gryph-charger gray here. So now I've already got a little bit of experience with this color because I got to play with the Citadel contrast paints a few days ago with Ash from Guerrilla Miniature Games. And this is the first one I picked out because I thought the tone looked really cool. And it actually comes out a fair bit lighter than I originally expected. So I'm actually going to switch to a smaller brush here. And the reason for that is that I want to have more fine control because I just want to do his feathers. Which really is just his head, now that I look at it. So I find is this color has a little bit of a green tint to it, which you maybe wouldn't expect from the name or even from looking at the bottle. And here I'm trying to not tint his eye or his beak. So I'm saying is this color probably more than almost any other contrast paint I've used so far really significantly distinguishes the highlight from the shadow. Oh, just accidentally got his eye there. That's okay. That's what base coat touch-ups are for. You know, a lot of them, you know, sort of tint the whole surface and then just leave a shadow. Or they just tint the whole surface and don't necessarily leave so much of a highlight. And this one seems to have the most depth between the darkest color and the lightest color. To the point where the lightest color is almost too light, because there's not a lot of steps in between. Now I'm going to just get his, I think his hands might be bare as well. No, he's wearing little gloves. Just going to get this. We're going to pretend this arm is exposed. I can't tell if he's actually got a sleeve on or not. So it's funny, I don't actually, oddly enough, see a lot of use for this specific color, and yet it seems to have the most contrast between its highlight and its shadow compared to any other contrast colors, and that's maybe just a little bit ironic. It's the one that kind of does the most namesake job, seems to be the one that has the least specific application. Okay, well, I'm going to leave that to dry and come back to it in a few minutes. Alright, so there's the Gryph-charger gray, fully dry. Here you see I missed a tiny little spot on the back of his head here. But that's okay, we can get that later. That's actually a danger, or at least a concern, with heavily textured areas like fur and feathers. Because it's really easy to get a tiny little pocket like this that you just miss a tiny little bubble. But they're usually also a deep shadow, so you're not going to throw off the look by going back in and adding just a dot of it later. So it's got, you know, a very good, almost a black to, you know, a light gray transition, but it's also got a little bit of a green tint to it, which is kind of unexpected. It looks good though. It actually works really well on this crow character because crows actually have a little bit of an iridescent sheen to their feathers. So a little hint of like green or purple in it actually can work really well. What I'd actually like to try and do now, just while I'm waiting for this, I'm going to take the Magos purple, which I haven't really figured out what to do with this color yet. It seems really situational. But I'm going to add just a little bit of this to some spots on his head here. And this is just an experiment for experiment's sake. We are on the test bench here after all. So I'm going to do this kind of at the back of the head. And then what I'm going to do is grab a little bit of the technical medium and try and blend that out really quickly. So let's just rinse the brush. I should have put the technical medium down first. But that's okay. Now I think this model is a little bit forgiving because it's so heavily textured. This might not look quite as effective on a big smooth surface. There we go. Now I'm going to flip that a bit. I'm going to bring the technical medium in just sort of under his head. And I'm going to use it as sort of just to protect his beak here. And we can bring a little bit more Magos purple in. And just lay it under his beak like so. So what I'm doing there is I'm almost using the Citadel medium as a masking fluid, because what we found is it kind of almost repels the contrast paints a little bit. That's not too bad. I'd actually like to see a little more of the purple up at the top of the head. Again, just grab a little bit of medium and just smooth that out just a touch. You know, that's pretty cool. I could see doing that sort of two-color fade being really, really beneficial on things like lizardmen. You know, any sort of like Tengu warrior from a, you know, like from Bushido, for example. That's pretty cool. Should like it much better on this side of his head. But overall, that's a really neat effect. Now that I think worked because the Gryph-charger gray it leaves so much of the highlight behind. You know, a lot of these contrast colors seem to kind of hide the highlights and kind of tone them down a fair bit. You know, like for example, this is the Aquiline green, and there's not a lot of highlight left. It's, you know, very much mid-tone and shadow as far as, you know, sort of a traditional kind of color would go. Whereas this Gryph-charger gray left a lot of the almost near base coat color shown on the highest points. Seems to just have a little bit of a lower surface tension. And what that let us do is bring in a second color on top of it because there was so much highlight still left behind to work with. And I think that Magos purple specifically works really well because it also has that same behavior. For example, here's the Magos purple on Conan's cloak, and you can see it left a lot of the highlight behind as well. You know, it produced slightly more subtle shadows, but gave us a pretty, you know, vibrant highlight. It's a little bit more of a translucent color with a little bit lower surface tension, I think. And because they're both sort of in that same category, I think they played really well together, because even where I've applied both colors, I still have some pretty decent highlights left. You know, because they both sort of avoided those same highest point areas. So what I'm finding, I think, is the Citadel contrast colors seem to fit into two categories. There's sort of these ones that are a little more translucent, have a little more give to their surface tension, and then there's other ones that do a more general tint and more or less kind of bring everything down to a classic base coat point and then work low from there. So like there's not really much left in the way of a highlight here. You could definitely dry brush this model and, you know, punch that Aquiline green. Still don't know how to pronounce it. But you could still, you know, there's a lot of work you could do to brighten this one up, whereas you really wouldn't want to brighten these feathers up at all, even after two coats. And so there sort of seems to be sort of two distinct families to these contrast colors, I'm finding. And knowing which one fits into which is, you know, going to be kind of key going forward, I think. And unfortunately, it's just going to be something we learn from trial and error as a painting community. But there's probably also things you can do, like playing with the Citadel contrast medium to get this to leave more of a highlight. So we'll have to see how that goes. I think you'd have to mix it on a palette to really get some benefits out of that. But it'll be curious to see what happens in the coming weeks. Regardless, there is Gryph-charger Gray and also Magos Purple, which I didn't originally intend to be in this video, but I'm really glad I kind of had that little hit of inspiration because I really like how this came out. It's got a really good little kind of subtle, not necessarily iridescent, but it's in that same sort of family. It's got that feel to it, and I really like where it went. But the Gryph-charger Gray, because it is kind of a grayish tone that leaves a lot of the base coat showing, I think might work really well to shade things that you've already base coated. We'll have to experiment in the near future, but I think it might work really well for doing things like adding shadows to clothing, for example. So we'll have to test that out in the near future. Hey, if you enjoyed this video here on YouTube, please hit like and subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell icon so you get notifications when I post new videos. You can also join me at twitch.tv/epicduckstudios on Thursday, Friday, and Sunday evenings at 8:30 p.m. Eastern for live painting and sculpting shows. If you'd like to support this show, you can do that at patreon.com/epicduck. Every little bit helps cover the costs of paint, models, and all my video production gear, but more importantly, it helps keep food in my kid's belly and a roof over his head. I'd like to give a huge thank you to all of my patrons and Twitch subscribers, both past and present. Your ongoing support and encouragement is really what makes this possible. Thanks for watching, and until next time, do something epic.